Um, so over the weekend, I decided completely out of nowhere that I was going to learn this new, like highly complex kettlebell flow.
Oh, a kettlebell flow. I mean, that is incredibly ambitious. Those are really not easy at all.
Yeah, I was feeling overly confident, like I had watched this video online and the person doing it looked so fluid.
Oh, they always make it look like a breeze.
Right. It was like a dance, but, with a heavy iron cannonball. And I'm just sitting on my couch watching this thinking, hey, I lift weights. I have decent body awareness. I could absolutely do that.
Yes. The classic trap. It's like the illusion of competence just from watching someone else do it perfectly.
Exactly. So I go to the gym, I grab the right size kettlebell, and I set up my phone so I can reference the video. And I take this deep breath, and, well, my brain just experienced a total catastrophic system failure.
Just a complete short circuit the second you picked up the weight.
It was humiliating. I mean, I was moving my left foot when I should have been swinging my right arm. The bell kept crashing into my forearm. I almost dropped it on my toe.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I just felt incredibly uncoordinated, like I had suddenly forgotten how my own limbs worked. And as I'm standing there just sweating and frustrated, it really hit me. Like, why does learning something new as an adult feel so exhausting? It's literally like pulling teeth.
It really is. And, it's such a universal feeling. We really have all been there.
Right. Whether it's deciding you want to pick up a guitar during a long weekend or trying to learn Spanish for a trip or even just navigating some brand new software they suddenly rolled out at work.
Oh, the new software updates are the worst.
They are. You sit down to do it and it feels like your own brain is just actively, aggressively fighting you.
It feels exactly like a wall. And I think the default reaction for most of us is to just blame ourselves. We think, well, I'm just getting older, I'm losing my edge, or I just don't have the discipline I used to.
Yeah, exactly. You feel like you're just broken.
Right. But it is actually not a lack of willpower at all. It is pure biology.
Which is exactly what we're unpacking today. I'm Dan, by the way.
And I'm Michelle. Welcome to Radio BFit.
All right, let's get into it. We are diving into a really fascinating piece of research from the BFit sources today, all about what neuroscientists call the age 25 gate.
Yeah, it's such an interesting concept.
It really is. We're going to explore this kind of uncomfortable truth about the adult brain. Specifically, we're looking at why that passive, effortless, sponge-like learning we all enjoyed as kids completely shuts down after our mid-20s.
And more importantly, we're going to talk about how you can actually force your adult brain back into that child mode, for rapid skill acquisition.
Which sounds amazing.
It is,
Yeah,
because the
yeah.
good news is you can still learn just as deeply as you did when you were 7 years old, but you have to use a completely different set of biological keys to unlock that door.
It is incredibly empowering once you understand the mechanics of it. Because I'll be honest, reading through these research sources, the very first thing that hit me was a pretty hard truth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, most of what you experience every single day leaves absolutely no lasting trace in your brain whatsoever.
None at all. I mean, zero structural impact.
Every conversation you have in passing, every social media feed you scroll through, every news article you skim over your coffee, like, we tend to think of our brains as these constant recorders, right?
Right, just passively absorbing the world around us.
Exactly. But the adult brain is not a sponge. It is an incredibly aggressive filter. It is actively ignoring almost everything you're exposed to.
Which, when you first hear it, sounds a little bleak. Like, you think of all the things you've read or seen that have just vanished into thin air.
Yeah, it hurts my pride a little bit.
Totally. But it's actually a brilliant, beautifully designed evolutionary feature. I mean, to understand why learning is so hard for us now, we really have to break down the fundamental difference between the childhood brain and the adult brain.
Let's contrast them. Because the phrase everyone uses is, kids are like sponges. You watch a 5-year-old figure out an iPad in 30 seconds or pick up a whole new accent just by being in a new city for a month, and it looks like magic.
And neurologically speaking, it kind of is magic. During childhood, the human nervous system is designed for one primary goal, which is fluid adaptation.
Okay.
It relies on this state called passive neuroplasticity. This basically means that the child's brain is constantly customizing itself to its environment, and it does this effortlessly.
So it's just soaking everything up by default.
Exactly. It is constantly mapping the specific sounds of its native language, it's learning to recognize faces, it's tracking gravity and movement.
So when a kid is just sitting in a room where adults are speaking a language, they don't have to study grammar. They don't have flashcards.
Nope, not at all.
Their brain is just physically wiring itself to those specific sounds, even if they aren't consciously trying to learn.
Right, because the childhood brain is wide open. Evolutionarily, a human infant is born incredibly helpless compared to other animals. To survive, its brain has to assume that literally every single repeated input in its environment is crucial.
It has to map everything just to stay alive.
Yes. It is a period of massive, metabolically expensive brain building.
I was trying to visualize this when looking through the research, just to give it a physical shape. And I like to think of the childhood brain as this massive expanse of fresh, highly sensitive, wet cement.
Oh, I really love that image.
Right. Because if you have a perfectly smooth patch of wet cement, you don't have to try to make a mark on it. Every single thing that walks across it, a dog, a bird, a leaf falling from a tree, it leaves a clear, perfect impression without any effort at all.
Yeah, the cement just passively takes the shape of whatever touches it. That is a perfect analogy for passive neuroplasticity.
The wet cement brain.
Exactly. But then, right around the mid-20s, a massive biological shift happens. That cement dries.
The fun is over.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The brain transitions out of fluid adaptation and enters a state of functional stability. That passive, effortless neuroplasticity just largely shuts down.
The dry cement. Which means if I want to leave a footprint on that surface now, I can't just lightly step on it. I can't just passively walk across it. I literally need a jackhammer.
You really do. You need heavy machinery to force a change. And when you first realize this, you might ask, well, why on earth would evolution do this to us?
Right, why take away the superpower of effortless learning? Why make it so hard to learn a new kettlebell flow or a new language? It feels like a biological betrayal.
It feels like a downgrade. But functional stability is actually a crucial, life-saving survival mechanism. It is a feature, not a bug.
How so? Walk me through the evolutionary logic there.
Well, think about all the vital circuits in your brain that keep you alive and functioning in society right now. Obviously, you have the baseline stuff, your heartbeat, your breathing, digestion.
Sure.
But beyond that, think about all the highly practiced, complex motor skills and cognitive maps you've built over decades. Like, think about driving a car.
Okay, yeah.
When you first learned to drive, it took all your brain power, right? But now you can drive on a busy highway at 60 miles an hour while sipping coffee while thinking about a meeting you have later that day.
Totally. It's completely automatic.
Exactly. Your brain has built an incredibly robust automated circuit for driving. Or think about chopping vegetables with a sharp knife while holding a conversation.
I see where you're going with this.
You absolutely do not want those critical, highly functioning circuits shifting unpredictably just because you were exposed to a new environment.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, that makes total sense. If my brain was still in wet cement mode and I went to the gym to learn a wildly different physical movement like that kettlebell flow, my brain might accidentally overwrite the motor pathways I use to safely drive my car home.
Precisely. The wet cement would just wash away the old footprint to make room for the new one.
That would be disastrous.
It really would. You need your driving circuits to be rock solid.
Yeah.
You need your language circuits to be stable so you can communicate without having to relearn vocabulary every single morning.
Right.
You want functional stability for the things that keep you functioning. Dr. Michael Merznick, who is a brilliant researcher at UCSF and who actually won the Kavli Prize for this exact work, puts this so well. He emphasizes that acquiring skills at any age is a product of actual physical, neurological remodeling.
I want to pause on that phrase, physical remodeling, because I think in everyday life, we treat memory and learning like it's software.
Oh, absolutely we do.
We think we are just downloading a file onto a hard drive or dropping a document into a folder. But he's saying it's not software, it's hardware.
It is entirely hardware. When you learn something new as an adult, you are not just storing data. You are literally changing the physical structure of your brain.
That's wild to think about.
It really is. You are thickening connections between neurons. You are growing new dendritic spines. You are taking physical, biological real estate and reassigning its purpose.
Which takes calories.
Yeah.
It takes energy.
It takes a massive amount of metabolic energy. The brain is an energy hog to begin with, right? It consumes about 20% of your body's resting calories. So rewiring physical gray matter is extremely expensive.
So it's protecting its resources.
Exactly. Your adult brain is incredibly stingy about when it allows this to happen. To turn on that jackhammer, to change the dry cement, you have to prove to your nervous system that this new information is actually worth the caloric cost.
Okay, I have to bring up a very relatable scenario here because reading this research honestly hurt my feelings a little bit. It kind of attacked my entire lifestyle.
Uh-oh. Let's hear it.
I am the absolute king of the background podcast. I will have a podcast or an audiobook or some long YouTube essay playing while I am doing the dishes, while I am folding laundry or driving to the grocery store.
I think a lot of people do that.
Yeah. And I always assumed that even if I wasn't fully paying attention, some of that knowledge was seeping in. I thought my brain was absorbing it by osmosis, like a slow drip of intelligence while I matched socks.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Are you telling me my brain is actively ignoring all of it?
I hate to break it to you, Dan, but yes, passive exposure leaves zero structural mark on an adult brain.
Wait, hold on. Let me push back on this a little bit. Because I swear, I have learned random historical facts or weird science trivia from podcasts I was half listening to while cleaning the kitchen.
Okay, fair enough.
Like I can repeat them at dinner parties. Are you saying I'm hallucinating that knowledge?
Well, you aren't hallucinating it, but we have to distinguish between short-term working memory and actual structural neuroplasticity. You might catch a fleeting fact, sure.
Like a funny anecdote or a name?
Right. It might lodge in your short-term memory for a day or two. Psychologists call this the illusion of fluency. You feel like you know the material because you are currently hearing it, or because you can recall a tiny fragment of it an hour later.
The illusion of fluency. Man, that hits hard.
It's tough. But in terms of physical neurological remodeling, deep skill acquisition, true mastery of a concept that you can draw upon months from now, no. Background listening achieves none of that.
Because there's no signal to build.
Exactly. There is no metabolic signal telling your brain to physically change its architecture. The adult brain just filters it out as background noise.
Wow. So reading a dense textbook while the TV is on in the background, or having a documentary playing while I answer emails, I am essentially just making noise.
Yeah.
I am burning time, but I am not actually learning.
You are just making noise. The adult brain requires a very specific locked-in gating mechanism to open up neuroplasticity. And if passive exposure doesn't work, if the wet cement is gone, what replaces it?
Right. What's the new tool?
The answer is deliberate attention. Attention is the absolute non-negotiable gatekeeper for adult learning.
Which brings us to some landmark research in the sources that I found absolutely mind-blowing. I really want to spend some time unpacking this because it proves exactly what you're saying about attention being the gatekeeper.
It's so fascinating.
It completely changed how I view focus. This is the UCSF rotating drum experiment.
Yes. This study is an absolute classic in neuroscience. It was conducted by Dr. Mrzenish and his colleagues back in 2006. And to understand why this was such a big deal, you have to realize that for a long time, the scientific consensus was that the adult brain was basically fixed.
Like once you hit your 20s, the map was drawn in pen.
Exactly. This study helped shatter that idea while also revealing the catch.
Okay, so paint the picture for us. How did this experiment actually work? Put us in the room with these researchers.
Imagine you are a subject in this study. You come into the lab, you sit down in a chair, and you rest your hand on a table. And underneath your fingertips, there is a rotating cylinder, like a little drum.
Okay.
And on the surface of this rotating drum, there are subtle tactile patterns, little bumps, ridges, and grooves.
So it's constantly spinning. You're just physically feeling this texture moving across your skin, kind of like resting your fingers on a spinning globe that has raised mountains on it.
That's a great way to picture it. It's continuous physical stimulation of the nerves in your fingertips. Now, to see how the brain reacts to this, the researchers set up two different conditions. In the first condition, they gave the subjects very specific instructions. What did they tell them? They said, we want you to pay extremely close, deliberate attention to the physical sensation on your fingertips. The pattern is going to change slightly. If you can identify the exact moment the tactile pattern shifts, press a button, and you get a reward.
So their mental spotlight is completely 100% dialed in on their fingers. They are hunting for that tiny physical change.
Right. Their attention is localized entirely on that touch sensation. And what the researchers found was incredible. When the subjects paid close attention to that physical feeling to get a reward, the physical representation of their fingers in their brain actually changed.
Like the literal brain area got bigger.
Yes. The actual area of the cerebral cortex dedicated to mapping those fingers changed rapidly and measurably. It expanded. It rewired to become highly sensitive to those specific bump patterns.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. They focused hard on their fingers, so the finger part of the brain got a biological upgrade. The jackhammer went to work.
Exactly.
But here's the crazy part. The part that totally recontextualizes how we live our lives. What was the second condition? Let me guess. Did they blindfold them or change the speed of the drum?
Actually, no. They kept the physical environment completely identical. In the second condition, they had different subjects rest their fingers on the exact same rotating drum.
Wait, the exact same one?
Yes, they were receiving the exact same physical input. The identical tactile patterns, the exact same bumps and ridges were passing under their fingers at the exact same speed.
So the biological input to the hand is identical. The nerves in the fingers are firing in the exact same sequence.
Identical. But their instructions were different. The researchers put headphones on this second group, and they told them, completely ignore the spinning drum under your fingers. It doesn't matter.
Ignore the physical feeling entirely.
Right. Instead, they said, focus all of your attention on listening to a specific auditory tone in your headphones. When you hear the tone change, press the button to get the reward.
So their hands are feeling the drum, but their brain is listening for a beep.
Exactly. And the result of this second condition was staggering. When the subjects focused their attention on the auditory tone, their auditory cortex, the part of the brain that processes sound, physically changed and rewired to become more sensitive to that tone.
Which makes sense. But what about their fingers?
The finger mapping in their brain, the part receiving constant physical stimulation from the spinning drum, it remained completely unchanged. Zero neuroplasticity. Zero rewiring.
That is incredible.
Even though their fingers were experiencing the exact same physical friction as the first group, the brain basically just ignored it.
So the input to the body was identical. The nerves were sending the exact same electrical signals up the arm. But because the attention was pointed somewhere else, at the headphones, the brain just threw the physical touch data in the trash.
It filtered it out completely.
Yeah.
It is a profound realization. As the researchers stated in their conclusion, experience-dependent adult plasticity requires a cognitive association between sensation and reward.
Right.
But to put that in plainer language, it is not the experience itself that rewires your brain. It is the attended experience.
The attended experience. I mean, that phrase alone is worth writing down on a sticky note and putting on your computer monitor.
It really is.
Because the brain routes all of its physical remodeling resources toward whatever is actively holding your focus. Anything outside of that absolute focal point is just discarded as irrelevant data.
Which brings us right back to our modern lives and why learning feels so impossible sometimes. Think about your background podcasts, or think about a student trying to study for a massive exam while listening to a playlist of their favorite songs with lyrics.
Oh, yeah.
Or someone trying to write a critical work email while keeping their social media tabs open on a second monitor.
This is the absolute plague of modern productivity, like split attention learning. We all do it. I do it constantly.
So common.
We think we are multitasking. We think we are being hyper-efficient by combining tasks. But if I'm trying to read a dense, complicated financial report for work, and I have a catchy pop song with lyrics playing in my headphones, what is physically happening in my brain based on that drum experiment?
Well, based on the neuroscience, your brain is a limited resource engine. It only has so much metabolic energy to dedicate to rewiring. Language processing, whether it's reading words on a page or deciphering lyrics in a song, takes a massive amount of computing power.
So they are competing.
Exactly. If you are reading words and simultaneously hearing words in a song, you are splitting the neurochemical spotlight.
So the jackhammer is getting confused.
That's a great way to put it. You are basically pointing the rewire signal partly at the financial report and partly at the pop song. Right. And because adult neuroplasticity requires such a high threshold of targeted energy to work at all, splitting that energy often means neither one gets the deep structural remodeling.
That is so frustrating.
You don't learn the report deeply, and honestly, you aren't even fully enjoying the song.
I'm basically just spraying the jackhammer wildly all over the dry cement, instead of focusing it on one precise spot to break through. I'm exhausting myself for no structural gain.
Exactly. You are diverting the neurochemical spotlight away from your target material. You are telling your brain that the pop song is just as critical to your survival as the financial report.
So if you are listening to this right now, and you're trying to figure out why a new skill isn't sticking, maybe it's a coding language you need for your career, or maybe you're like me and you're trying to memorize a complex workout before you look like a fool at the gym, you have to treat split attention like the absolute enemy.
It has to be a non-negotiable rule for adult learning. You cannot hack this. You cannot bypass the gating mechanism.
But practically speaking, what does that look like in a messy, noisy world?
It means being incredibly intentional about your environment. It means working in a dedicated space with a single, clearly defined task. If you are reading, you are only reading.
The phone goes away.
The phone is in another room. The extra browser tabs are closed. If you are practicing a physical movement at the gym, you are not also carrying on a text conversation about your weekend plans between sets. You have to narrow the beam of attention.
And I think it's really important to add some grace here because your attention will drift.
Yeah.
We are human beings, not robots.
So 100%.
You'll sit down, eliminate all distractions, and 5 minutes into focused reading, you'll suddenly wonder if you left the oven on. Or you'll feel this incredibly powerful urge to just quickly check your email. Your brain will try to escape the focus.
Constantly. The brain resists focus because focus is metabolically expensive. But here is the most reassuring part of the research. When your attention drifts, the simple act of noticing that drift and gently redirecting your focus back to the task, that is not a failure of learning.
It's not.
No, that redirection is the actual practice.
It's like a bicep curl for your focus.
Yes.
The weight goes down, you pull it back up. Every single time you realize you're thinking about dinner and you pull your attention back to the spreadsheet, you are actively strengthening that neurological gating mechanism.
Exactly. You are doing the reps. So behaviorally, we know we need the spotlight of attention. But if we move from the behavioral side, like the act of pointing our focus, to the actual physical neurochemistry inside our heads, what is that spotlight actually made of?
Right. What is the light bulb turning on inside the brain?
Yes.
This is where the science gets so incredibly cool, and honestly, where it all started to click for me. Because it's not just some abstract, magical aura of concentration. There are actual measurable chemicals doing the heavy lifting here.
So much chemistry.
The research outlines a dual action requirement. To force neuroplasticity in an adult, you need two specific brain chemicals working together at the exact same time, epinephrine and acetylcholine.
Let's break those two chemicals down because they play very different but equally vital roles in the remodeling process. Let's start with the energy source, which is epinephrine.
Epinephrine is essentially adrenaline, but functioning inside the brain, right? Its primary job is to provide alertness. It wakes the entire brain up.
Yes, and it is released by a structure deep in the brainstem called the locus coeruleus.
I have to say, I absolutely love the names of these brain structures.
Mhm.
The locus coeruleus. It sounds like a spell from Harry Potter. You wave a wand and shout locus coeruleus.
It really does. But in Latin, it just translates to the blue spot because of how it glows under a microscope.
The blue spot.
Yeah. When the locus coeruleus fires, it washes the brain in epinephrine. It makes you feel alert, awake, hypervigilant, and crucially, sometimes a little bit agitated or stressed.
Which is a really key point we need to circle back to, that feeling of agitation. So epinephrine is the energy source. It's the electricity powering the jackhammer.
Right.
But energy alone isn't enough to learn. If you just drink 3 massive cups of coffee, or you get jump scared by a loud noise, you have lots of epinephrine flooding your system. You are very awake. But you aren't necessarily learning a new language. You're just jittery.
Exactly. You have the raw electricity, but you don't have the targeted spotlight. You're just vibrating in your chair. That is where the second chemical comes in to guide the energy. Acetylcholine.
Acetylcholine is a chemical that actually stamps the new learning. It is the targeted marker. And it is released by another amazingly named structure deep in the forebrain, the nucleus basalis of Meinert.
The nucleus basalis of Meinert.
That one doesn't sound like a spell. That sounds like a villain in a sci-fi movie. Beware the nucleus basalis.
It kind of does, but it is actually your absolute best friend when it comes to learning. It is the brain's primary cholinergic relay to the cortex. When you focus intensely on a specific task, like those subjects focusing on the feeling of the rotating drum under their fingers, the nucleus basalis of Meinert releases acetylcholine specifically and precisely into the areas of the brain that are actively engaged at that exact moment.
So it's not a general wash over the whole brain like the epinephrine. It's a laser beam.
Exactly. It is a chemical spotlight. It marks the specific active synapses and basically says, hey, these are the ones. Out of the billions of connections in the brain, these specific neurons firing right now are the ones that are important. Tag them for structural change.
There was a really elegant study in the sources that proved exactly how precise this chemical mechanism is. It was published in the journal Science back in 1998 by Kilgard and Mersenich.
Mersenich again. He is absolutely everywhere in this field of study.
He really is the godfather of adult neuroplasticity. So in this 1998 study, they were looking at the auditory cortex, the hearing center. They took subjects and played a very specific random sound frequency for them, just a distinct auditory tone.
And normally, as an adult with a fully formed brain, just passively hearing a random tone once or twice doesn't physically rewire your auditory cortex.
Right. The wet cement is dry. A random beep doesn't break the cement. But while they played this specific tone, the researchers did something wild. They artificially stimulated the nucleus basalis of minor to release acetylcholine at the exact moment the sound was playing.
So they're essentially forcefully, manually turning on the chemical spotlight at the precise millisecond the sound data is being processed by the brain.
Exactly. And the result?
Yeah.
It produced precise, massive, and lasting reorganization of the auditory cortex. The physical brain map actually changed to become highly, highly sensitive to that specific tone.
Wow.
But, and this is the absolute crucial takeaway, the cortex only changed where the chemical signal, the acetylcholine, and the sensory input, a sound tone, coincided perfectly.
It is literally the neurochemical equivalent of highlighting a sentence in a dense textbook with a bright neon marker. You absolutely need the sentence to be there on the page. That is the sensory input, the action you are performing.
Right.
And you absolutely need the neon marker, which is the acetylcholine. Only the specific part of the page that gets highlighted gets remembered and rebuilt.
I love that visual. So to force an adult brain to learn, you absolutely must have both elements present simultaneously. You need the epinephrine from the locus coeruleus to wake everything up and provide the energy, and you need the acetylcholine from the nucleus basalis to highlight the specific neural circuits you want to keep.
You cannot have focused structural learning without both.
Which leads us to a realization that is so incredibly relatable and honestly such a huge relief. Knowing this exact chemistry completely changes how we should interpret the physical, emotional feeling of learning.
Oh, absolutely.
This was the biggest aha moment for me in all of this research. It completely reframed my entire life. I want everyone listening to think about the intense, deeply uncomfortable friction you feel in the first 10 minutes of starting a hard cognitive task.
Oh, the absolute dread. The wall.
Right. You sit down at your desk to read a dense financial report, or you step up to the squat rack to try and coordinate a complex new lifting technique that requires full body awareness. And for the first 5 to 10 minutes, your brain is just screaming at you.
Stop. Go look at your phone.
Exactly. Go get a snack. Go organize the sock drawer. The urge to quit or switch to an easier task is overwhelmingly strong.
It is visceral.
I always, my entire adult life, thought that urge to quit meant something was wrong. I thought it meant I was too tired, or I hadn't had enough coffee, or maybe I just wasn't smart enough to grasp the material. Or maybe it just wasn't my best time of day to study.
You thought it was a sign of failure.
Yes, I viewed that intense friction as a biological sign of failure. But knowing what we know now about the locus coeruleus, what is actually happening in your brain during those first agonizing 10 minutes.
You're telling me that awful, uncomfortable feeling is literally just the neurochemical engine warming up?
Yes. It is exactly that. That feeling of agitation, that mild discomfort, that intense resistance and urge to flee. That is the literal sensation of epinephrine being released by the locus coeruleus.
Wow. Your brain is just saying, okay, we are trying to do something difficult that requires structural rewiring, that requires energy. We need to wake up and pay attention. Remember, epinephrine is structurally very similar to adrenaline. It naturally feels a little bit like stress. Evolutionarily, we are wired to learn deeply when our survival is threatened, and survival situations are stressful. So it is supposed to feel a little uncomfortable.
That is so freeing to hear.
That friction isn't failure. That friction is the biological prerequisite for change. You have to push through the epinephrine release to get the acetylcholine spotlight to finally turn on.
That changes everything. So if you're listening to this right now, you sit down later today to learn something hard. Maybe you're practicing a new language or trying to understand a new spreadsheet. And within 5 minutes, you feel that overwhelming, suffocating urge to quit and look at social media. Recognize that feeling for exactly what it is.
It's just the machinery.
Exactly. It is not weakness. It is not a lack of intelligence. It is just your brain chemistry shifting gears. The machinery is spooling up. Do not interpret it as a sign that you lack focus. If you can just push through that 10-minute wall of agitation, the focus chemistry will follow. The acetylcholine will kick in.
It is so liberating to know that learning is supposed to hurt a little bit at first. The dry cement doesn't want to yield. It is supposed to be hard work.
And the research actually gives us a highly practical, purely biological trick to help jumpstart this whole system, a way to bypass a little bit of that initial behavioral friction and manually prime the brain for focus before you even start.
Yes, the visual anchor technique.
I tried this, And I have to admit, it feels a little silly the first time you do it, but the neurobiology behind it is rock solid. Before you start your deep learning session, you use a simple visual anchor. You find a single, fixed point at the exact distance where you'll be working.
Okay.
Maybe it's a specific speck on the wall right behind your computer monitor, or the center of the book page you are about to read, or even a spot on the gym floor if you're about to practice a physical skill.
And you just stare at it.
You just stare at that single, fixed point for 60 to 90 seconds. You try not to blink more than you naturally have to. You just hold your visual gaze intensely, narrowly, on that one spot.
It sounds almost too simple to be effective, but what is physically happening in the brainstem when we narrow our gaze like that?
It's all about something called vergence eye movements.
Yeah.
When you narrow your visual field and focus intensely on a single point, the physical position of your eyes sends a direct, hardwired signal deep into the brainstem. It directly stimulates the locus coeruleus.
Our old friend, the blue spot.
Exactly. Narrowing your vision physically triggers the release of epinephrine. It acts like a manual override switch. You are biologically forcing an increase in your alertness and preparing your brain for focused attention before you even read the first word of your document or pick up the kettlebell.
It's basically telling your nervous system, hey, whatever we are intensely looking at right now is incredibly important to our survival. Wake up, flood the system with energy, and get ready to mark it.
Yeah, it primes the pump.
It primes the locus coeruleus and the nucleus basalis before you even begin the cognitive heavy lifting.
It is a zero-cost, purely biological tool, 60 to 90 seconds of staring at a spot. It's like a warm-up set for your neurochemistry.
So let's trace exactly where we are in the learning process right now. Let's say you've done the visual anchor. You've sat down to work. You've pushed through the 10 minutes of friction and agitation.
Right.
You've used your deliberate attention to focus entirely on the task. You've had the epinephrine wake you up, and you had the acetylcholine act as the neon chemical highlighter, marking the exact neural synapses you use to practice that new kettlebell flow or comprehend that financial report.
We've successfully stamped the synapses. The highlighting is done.
Right. So the ultimate question is, are we fully rewired yet? Have you successfully learned the skill?
This is, without a doubt, the most counterintuitive truth in the entire stack of source material. It goes against everything we feel while we're studying.
Oh, yeah.
The answer is no. We have not actually learned it yet. Absolutely zero structural learning, no physical remodeling of the brain's gray matter happens during the focus session itself.
I want to repeat that and really let it hang in the air because it is so wild to think about. When you are studying intensely or practicing a physical movement until you sweat, you are not actually rewiring your brain in that moment.
Wait, so when I'm sweating and trying my hardest, I'm not learning?
Nope, just placing tags. You're just placing the neon sticky notes on the synapses saying, hey, biological construction crew, this pathway is important. Please come work on this area later when we have downtime.
That is crazy.
The focus session only tags the brain. It identifies the target, the actual construction work, the massive metabolic process of consolidation, growing new dendrites, and physically rewiring the circuits occurs during deep rest and sleep. Sleep is the architect. Rest is when the building actually happens.
This brings us to a really fascinating, almost sci-fi concept from a 2021 study published in the journal Cell Reports by Booch and colleagues. They were researching a phenomenon called waking hippocampo-neocortical replay.
That is an absolute mouthful of neuroscience jargon. Let's break that down into plain, usable language.
All right, let's simplify it. The hippocampus is the seahorse-shaped part of the brain that is heavily involved in memory formation. The neocortex is the wrinkled outer layer of the brain, where higher-level processing and long-term storage happens.
Okay.
What Book and his team found is that when humans learn a new skill, the brain needs to rapidly rehearse and strengthen those newly formed patterns to make them permanent. But it does it during periods of rest, not during the practice itself.
Waking replay.
Exactly. Imagine you are practicing a complex piano scale. While your fingers are hitting the keys, you are focused, you are releasing acetylcholine, you are tagging the specific synapses involved in those finger movements. But when you stop playing, take your hands off the keys and just rest quietly for a moment. Your brain does something incredible. It takes that exact neural sequence you just used and it hits fast forward. It replays the sequence internally, incredibly fast, sometimes 20 times faster than you actually played it, over and over and over again.
It is literally rehearsing the skill without you actively moving a muscle.
Yes. And that internal high-speed replay during periods of rest is what actually converts those fragile, short-term neurochemical tags into durable, long-term structural connections. The replay is the construction crew doing the building.
So if you are someone who just grinds through hour after hour of intense, unbroken focus work, if you study for 4 hours straight without ever taking a real break, or you drill a physical skill endlessly without pausing, you are accumulating all these neurochemical tags. You are putting up thousands of sticky notes.
But you never let the construction crew come onto the site to build the actual pathways. You never give the brain the idle time it needs to hit fast forward and run the replay.
Exactly. The work isn't totally wasted, but it is massively, massively less effective than it could be. You are essentially fighting your own biology.
Which is why taking a nap after working hard is now scientifically mandated. I will gladly use this excuse for the rest of my life. Sorry, I can't do the dishes. I'm allowing waking hippocampal-neocortical replay to occur.
It is the perfect excuse. But it goes beyond just getting a full 8 hours of sleep at night, though that is obviously critical. The research points to a very specific, highly crucial window right after you learn something new.
The post-learning window. This is where we move from theory to daily practice.
Let's look at the science here, because there is a very recent study from 2024 by Buchris and colleagues. They looked at 65 physically active participants. They had these participants do a demanding cognitive test to establish a baseline and induce learning. And then they split them up into groups.
What did the groups do?
One group just sat there passively, kind of doing whatever. The other group was put through a 10-minute NSDR protocol.
Okay, NSDR. Non-sleep deep rest. Let's define that for anyone who hasn't heard the term.
Also sometimes called yoga nidra in traditional practices. It's essentially a guided relaxation technique. You lie perfectly still, usually on your back, and you listen to an audio track of voice, directing your attention to different parts of your body, doing a slow body scan. The key is that you remain completely still, you relax your breathing, but you do not actually fall asleep. You hover right on the edge.
So what did the 2024 study find with these 65 athletes?
Compared to the control group that just sat around normally, the group that did just 10 minutes, just 600 seconds of NSDR, showed significant, measurable improvements in reaction time and cognitive performance immediately after the intervention.
Just from 10 minutes of lying still on the floor.
Yes. The researchers suggest that the mechanism here is that NSDR actually decelerates your brainwave frequencies. It intentionally shifts your brain into a state that mimics the slow wave patterns we normally only see during light sleep. And those specific slow, light sleep brainwaves are the exact environment highly associated with massive memory consolidation and neural replay.
You are basically hacking this system. You're tricking your brain into entering a mini consolidation phase, a rapid building phase, while you are still fully awake.
Exactly. You are inviting the construction crew in for a highly productive 10-minute shift. And Dr. Wendy Suzuki, who is a phenomenal neuroscientist out of NYU, her research echoes this perfectly. She found that people who incorporate a consistent daily NSDR practice into their routines have measurable, compounding improvements in their sustained attention, working memory, and recognition memory over time.
The benefits compound. It's not just a one-off trick to remember a phone number. It fundamentally improves the machinery of your brain.
It really does.
You know, knowledge really is your best personal trainer. And that's what BeFit.ai is all about. We try to share everything you need to make fitness and wellness click. If you want a simple breakdown later, there are free articles that make all this stuff feel clear and doable.
They do a fantastic job of taking these incredibly dense neuroscience concepts, like waking replay, and turning them into practical tools, which is exactly what we need to do right now for our listeners. Let's build the actual protocol.
Yes, let's bring all this deep science together into something a normal person with a busy schedule can actually use today. We've talked about the spotlight of attention, the chemistry of friction, and the architecture of rest. How do we structure the ideal, optimized learning session to work with our biology?
It all comes down to understanding and respecting your ultradian rhythms.
Okay, we hear about circadian rhythms all the time, right? That's our 24-hour biological clock, the sleep and wake cycle controlled by the sun. What is an ultradian rhythm?
Ultradian rhythms are shorter biological cycles that occur continuously throughout the day, usually lasting around 90 minutes. Just like you have a 24-hour cycle of sleep, your brain naturally cycles through peaks and valleys of alertness and focus capacity roughly every 90 minutes.
So we literally have natural biological waves of focus crashing through our nervous system all day long.
Exactly. You are riding a wave. And neuroscience research across multiple disciplines strongly points to 90 minutes as the absolute biological limit for high-quality, intense cognitive focus.
So what happens after 90 minutes?
Beyond 90 minutes of sustained effort, the acetylcholine reserves in the nucleus basalis start to deplete. The epinephrine, which was providing healthy alertness, begins to accumulate and shifts from alert to just plain stressed and anxious. The quality of your attention deteriorates sharply.
You hit a wall of diminishing returns, and you hit it hard.
Mhm.
Trying to push past 90 minutes is like trying to drive a car with no oil in the engine. You're just causing damage.
Very hard. So when you are designing a deep learning block for yourself, you want to respect that 90-minute limit. You bracket your time based on biology.
But the source material recommends a really solid, realistic approach here. Don't start with a full 90-minute block right out of the gate if you aren't used to it. That's like trying to run a marathon without training. You will fail and get discouraged. Start with 60 minutes.
60 minutes is a very doable, highly effective window for almost anyone.
So let's walk through what this holistic 5-step protocol actually looks like for someone listening right now. Let's say you have a busy afternoon, but you really need to learn a new skill for work, or maybe you are finally sitting down to study for a certification exam.
Step 1, eliminate split attention. This is the prerequisite. Close the extra browser tabs. Silence your phone and physically put it in another room. Turn off the music with lyrics.
Right. Instrumental only if you need it.
Create an environment where the absolute only sensory input competing for your brain's resources is the task at hand.
Step 2, prime the neurochemical system. Use that visual anchor trick. Sit at your desk, find a fixed point on your screen or on the wall, and stare at it intensely for 60 to 90 seconds. Tell your locus coeruleus to wake up, narrow your visual field, and flood the system with epinephrine before you even start reading.
Step 3, expect the friction, then welcome it. When you hit start on your 60-minute timer, know in advance that the first 5 to 10 minutes might feel terrible. You will feel agitated. You will suddenly remember an email you need to send. You will want to quit.
The warm-up phase.
Exactly. Recognize that this is just the neurochemical engine warming up. Push through that initial biological resistance to allow the acetylcholine spotlight to finally turn on.
Step 4, deep focus. Work intensely for the remainder of that 60-minute block. Lean into it, and when your mind inevitably wanders, and it absolutely will multiple times, gently pull it back to the material. Remember that every single time you redirect your focus, you are doing a biological rep. You are strengthening the circuit. It's practice, not failure.
And finally, step 5, the architect phase. The most important step. When the timer goes off at 60 minutes, stop. Hard stop.
This is where I usually mess up, right? By grabbing my phone.
Yes. Do not immediately jump to your email to catch up. Do not pull your phone out of your pocket. Take 10 to 20 minutes of complete, screen-free, low-stimulus rest. Do an NSDR protocol, or just close your eyes and breathe. Let the waking replay consolidate those fragile tags into lasting structural changes in your brain. And hey, if you're enjoying this episode, we'd love it if you hit like or leave a comment. It really helps us get better at what we do. And honestly, that support is heartwarming. It's what keeps us going and motivates us to keep creating these episodes for you.
It really does mean a lot to us. And knowing that we can share these highly practical, life-changing tools with you, tools that demystify why things feel so hard, is the absolute best part of doing this show.
Because when you look at that 5-step protocol and you understand the biology behind it, it changes your entire relationship with effort.
It really does.
Think about it. 1 single hour of pure, undivided, neurochemically primed focus, followed by 10 minutes of quiet rest. That is infinitely more powerful structurally, biologically, and practically more powerful than 3 exhausting hours of half-focused grinding while listening to pop music, checking your texts, and fighting a constant battle of split attention.
It's about leveraging quality over quantity at a fundamental neurological level. You are trading time for depth.
Exactly.
Let's do a quick plain language recap of everything we've covered today, just to lock those neurochemical tags in place for everyone listening.
Perfect. Point 1. Passive learning basically dies at age 25. The wet cement of childhood dries up to protect your vital survival circuits. You can no longer absorb complex skills just by being exposed to them in the background. Osmosis is a myth for adults.
Point 2. Attention is the absolute gating mechanism. Without deliberate, unbroken focus, the adult brain simply filters out the experience. You have to actively point the spotlight, or the brain ignores the data to save energy.
Point 3. That spotlight is made of physical chemistry. Epinephrine wakes the brain up, which causes that initial uncomfortable feeling of friction and agitation. And acetylcholine acts as the neon chemical marker, highlighting the specific active synapses for structural rewiring.
Point four, the actual rewiring process doesn't happen while you are focusing and working. The focus session just places the tags. Deep rest, NSDR, and sleep are the biological architects that actually come in and build the new neural pathways.
Which is exactly why a 10 to 20-minute post-learning rest period,
Yeah.
completely free of new stimulation or screens, is absolutely crucial for consolidation.
Exactly. If you want to put this into practice today, you don't have to overhaul your whole life. Try just one small piece of it. Next time you sit down to do something difficult, try the 60-second visual focus trick before you start. Just stare at a spot.
Just to prime the pump.
Right. Or try taking just a 10-minute quiet rest, eyes closed, immediately after your next intense workout or study session. Just see how your brain feels.
Work with your biology, not against it. It makes everything so much easier.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today as you go about your life. Think about the last time you felt incredibly, overwhelmingly frustrated trying to learn something new.
We all have those moments.
Maybe you were trying to use a new app and wanted to throw your phone across the room, or you wanted to walk out of the gym because you couldn't get a movement right. What if that intense frustration wasn't a sign that you were failing? What if that powerful urge to quit was actually the exact biological signal, the flood of epinephrine, telling you that your brain was finally fully primed and ready to change?
I love that perspective. It changes everything about how we approach challenges.
It really does. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Keep learning, embrace the dry cement, keep pushing through the friction, and please don't forget to rest. We'll catch you next time on Radio BFit.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day.